and give you a fresh perspective when you are trying to solve any graph algorithms. So the agenda for this presentation would be, we'll be going through a very brief introduction of the graph. What is graph and why is it so important? We'll be looking at the examples. We'll be looking at like what are the areas where we can apply those graph algorithms, and you can see its advantages as well. There are so many graph algorithms that we can cover, but for now presentation, we'll be covering only the DFS. I think DFS is one of the most powerful algorithms that we have right now. And believe me, the DFS is not only used only in the computer science, like for example, in the algorithms, it is also used in the deep learning as well, machine learning as well. So I will walk you through the DFS algorithm with a little bit of solving approach, that what kind of mindset we need to have when we are trying to solve these graph algorithms. And we'll be looking at some of the applications of DFS at the end. So this is the agenda for next 45 minutes. Let's get started. Okay, so what is graph? In normal terms, whenever we think of graphs, we think of graph as only the nodes and edges. That is true, right? When I try to explain the graph, we can think of that, okay, it is inspired from arrays. When we talk about arrays, it's just a list of numbers. And for the graph, just the arrays, you can just expand the arrays to the edges, list of edges. For example, in this graph, as I'm showing you to the right, you can see that is Ram and Sham and Hari, and there are so many nodes. I'm naming all these nodes with the name of person, and you can see all these edges that are there in the graph. You can represent the graph as the set of edges. That's it. This is a very simple introduction of the graphs, but this is so powerful that it can solve very interesting problems at the end. Okay, why is it important? The only thing that we are adding right now from the arrays is the list of edges. So why is it so important right now? When we look at the graphs, humans can understand and interpret really well the graphs. We can really look at the context of the graphs. For example, if I go back to the previous graph, you can see that the Ram is connected to Krish and Sham. So that means there is some kind of a connection over there. But it is very difficult to represent this information in the arrays in the list. So when we actually work on the graphs, when we look at the structure, there is so much of inherent information that is already there in the graph that we can definitely use it. So this is one of the important factor that we have in the graphs, and that's what it's very useful. We can learn from surrounding context. As I've already given the examples, the context is already available to us. It is visible to the eyes, but that's a little challenging to the algorithms to capture those surrounding context. There are many algorithms that are available right now. Even the machine learning is trying to capture this thing, the context, in unsupervised way. But this is just the starting right now, at least in the machine learning field. But there are algorithms available which will give us certain kind of understanding. The last part is that boosting performance. So imagine if I were to tell you that, okay, how many friends does Ram have? It's very easy to see. There are 2 friends, right? So if your data is available in graph, we can answer very trivial questions very easily. We don't need to spend much time on it. But imagine that if I were to give you all these friends list in some kind of a table, say Ram and Sham, Ram and Krish, Ram and this one. So if I give you all this kind of in the list format, in the tabular format and all, then it gets very difficult for us to answer all these things. So that is why the graphs give us a very important context to answer very trivial questions that we wanted to ask from the data. So that's why it is very important to understand the graph, to understand the importance of it. Many of you must have heard about the trees, the graphs, and graphs is definitely the complex part of the trees. So here I would like to draw certain distinction between trees and graphs. Most of the graph algorithms can be applied on the trees as well. It's very straightforward. But just to distinguish between these two terminologies, we can see that with trees, we don't have any cycles in the trees. it will always be, so you will see that if there are number of nodes are n, then you will always see the number of edges will always be n minus 1, which means that there will not be any back edges in the trees. And in the graph, there is no restriction. You can have back edges, you can have circles, you can have anything. So in this one, in the below diagram, you can see A, B, C, and D. This is a circle. This is a cyclic graph. And the cyclic graph, that's why this is very complicated. That's why it's challenging to solve things in the graph. But again, the importance is that it will give you a stronger context, which you really want to use in your algorithm. So algorithm of graphs can be ported to trees, but not vice versa. Solving graph problem is more complicated. And that's why it is challenging. That's why everybody is looking for it. And there are so many applications for graphs. And you can see this. So for this one, for trees, we will not have any cycles to it. So main thing that you always see that any two vertices in the trees will always be connected by exactly one path. But that is not true for the graph. So this is a little distinction, very, very basic. Hope it's clear. Okay, moving forward. Let me give you some examples. Let me try to motivate you for why do you study graphs. Graphs algorithm are there everywhere. For example, it is there for the social network like Facebook. Facebook usually uses graph algorithms very, very deeply. For example, if you are recommending your friends, if you are recommending new people to someone that these are the people you may know, that is being done through the graph algorithms. How do they do it? They will simply look at your profile. They will look at your similar people from your network, which has a similar profile, and then look at their friends and then recommend their friends to you. And this is all done in the graph. Page ranking algorithm, Google, everybody knows about it. How do they do it? So page ranking is, let's say if I give you the web, the internet, the whole internet, like all the websites and links and everything, how do you find out the most important websites? Very simple. Like if there are so many points, so many pointers pointing to a single website, then you will know that that website will be having more importance than the other websites. So it's simply looking at the in edges, out edges, and then trying to find this. So page ranking is a very special algorithm which will look at the stability of the graphs and so on. It will give you one weightage from 0 to 1 for all the weights, for all the nodes in the graph, but this is being based on the graph algorithms. If you want to go to a nearest shop, right, nearest gas station and nearest hospital, how does it recommend you the shortest path? Shortest path is very good example of graph algorithm. Recommendations. Amazon, if you go for Amazon, if you go to Flipkart, if you go to any website, e-commerce website, and they try to recommend you all the products that you use, it's kind of little bit based on the profile, the similar profile, and then they can see what people who had bought the similar items have also bought it, and then they will try to recommend those items to you. And if you look at the maze problems and so on, matching, we will actually talk about at the end of this presentation. But these are small examples that I can recommend, that I can say to you that the graph algorithms is definitely being used everywhere. So big companies, wherever there is a big data and everywhere, everybody is now trying to look at the graph and then see how we can capture this information in the graph world, and then try to use and try to encode the contextual information in some way so that we can utilize it for their understanding. Okay, so now that's the graph, the importance of the graph and everything. Now we are moving towards some of the implementation part. Computer science. Now it's very good that we understand the graph, that this is the pair of edges. Now, how do you represent that pair of edges? You cannot just represent Ram and Shyam. You can do that as well. But what are the most efficient way in the computer science that you can use to represent graphs? One of the several ways that we can use is adjacency matrix and adjacency list. Adjacency matrix. Adjacency means that nearest to you, your neighbors. So it's a matrix. If you see, if there are 4 nodes in the graph, maybe I can show you here. So this is the graph that is coming here. You can see 1 is pointing to 2, 1 is pointing to 4, and 3 and 2. And if you represent this graph, there are two ways that we can represent this graph. One is the adjacency matrix. So here we represent the graph, the nodes in the left hand side, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the same nodes will be represented on the top side as well in the columnar format. And then you will represent 1 in the places where the edge is pointing towards that node. There is edge between 1 and 2. That's why the 1 is there. And if there is no edge between them, there is no edge between 1 and 1, that's why it will be 0. There is edge between 1 and 4, 1 and 4, that's why this will be 1 here. So this will give you a very succinct representation for this matrix, for this graph. This is called adjacency matrix. Major drawback for this format is that if the graph is huge and there are so many standalone nodes which are not connected to anyone, then this will waste so many data. This will waste so many bits to store the matrix. Imagine there will be one node which will not be connected to anyone, then that row will all be 0. So what this problem in the computer science is called sparse matrix. So it can lead to sparse matrix. That's why there's one other format that we can use to store the graph. We can use something called adjacency list. In this adjacency list, this will be represented as a linked list. So you can see the linked list will be represented. All these things will be, all the nodes will be represented by the head of the linked list nodes, and they will be represented to the next node, which will be connected to them. This is adjacent to them, which is 1 is connected to 2, and the 2 is connected to 4. I think there is little fault here, my bad. 2 should be connected to 3 actually. It is not 4. But I hope you got the idea. So this is like whatever the graphs that are connected to it, those edges will be represented by this. The advantage, definitely, you will be able to save a lot of space. That is a good part. Downside for this is that it could be slow for certain algorithms. Most of the algorithms, if you see, for example, if I want to find cycles in the graph and all, it's very difficult to code it in the linked list. It increases the complexity of the graph and all. And it's very easy to create algorithms for the matrix. So people choose different representations depending on what kind of problems they want to solve, what kind of efficiency they want to achieve, so on. So these are the two ways that we can represent graphs. So now, type of graphs. So let's slowly dig deeper into the graph representations and then see that what exactly are the graphs, how we can represent it, and then slowly we will jump into the algorithms. Okay, so type of graphs. So you can see it's a directed graph if there is an edge directed from one node to the another node, and there is undirected graph where there is no edge, which is undirected edge. It will not be pointing to anyone. So what we can normally do is that this undirected edge, undirected type of graph can also be represented by two side edges, which can represent as A pointing to B or B pointing to A. Same thing. So basically we can resolve everything into the directed edges, whether it is undirected or the directed one. Graph problems. So these are different problems that we see in real world when we try to study the graph algorithms. Traversal. So traversal is like we have to traverse the graph, and there are many algorithms that are available that will efficiently help you to traverse the graph. For example, some of the example for traversal algorithms are maximum flow. There could be something called shortest distance that is also related to the traversal class of the problems. You can also do some kind of a searching in the graph. For example, finding a person with the highest number of friends in the social network. We can also do some kind of a subgraphing in the graph as well. For example, given a graph, give me a minimum spanning tree. I'll not go into the details of it, minimum spanning tree and all, but just to give an example that what kind of different problems exist in computer science related to graphs. Clustering is where that I work the most. So clustering is like, how do you group similar nodes together? And so this is also one of the graph algorithms. We can use k-mean algorithms and so on to get those clusters. So now let's talk about the algorithmic approach. So this is the main agenda for this slide. If you are okay, if you have not followed all the slides earlier, it is still fine. But this is the main slide. What I want you to all to focus on is the algorithmic approach, that how do you solve any graph algorithms, graph problems that come to you. In my view, I have seen that these steps, if I follow, I'm easily able to decompose the problems into small steps and then solve it for the larger problems. For example, I try to follow these two steps when I see any graph problems. One is called induction and another is recursion. In a very simple terms, induction means that can we solve it at least for one smaller subset? This is very similar to any algorithms that you see, whether it is dynamic programming, it is anything. So this also applies to the graph algorithm as well. So whenever you see any graph algorithms, try to see how can you solve it at least for one single node. If you can solve for one single node, then you will follow the recursion steps. Then you will say that, okay, if you can solve for one single node, can we call the same method for all the nodes in the graph? So induction, make a base statement true, make a statement that is true for at least for one single node or one small set, and how to extend it for the larger nodes in the graph. Okay, give an example. How do you find minimum in the list of numbers? Okay, if this is a very easy, anybody can actually solve it. Let's try to solve this problem by using induction and then recursion steps. With the induction step, if I can find solution for at least for two elements, if I tell you, okay, these are the two numbers, 2 and 3, what is the minimum number? Can we find it? Yes, it is 2, right? That is what induction step says. Can we solve it for at least for two numbers? And then we say that, okay, can we construct a solution for n equal to 3, n equal to 4, and then n equal to n? That will be the recursion step, where you will try to expand it to the larger problem. Very simple. I'll walk you through an example for it. This is the array list of numbers given to you, and you need to find minimum number in this set. What you do is you will first solve for n equal to 2. That will give you the base case that you have at least one answer, at least for two numbers. And then how do you solve for the remaining numbers? You will compare that minimum number found so far to the remaining numbers. So we'll compare next time with 4 and minus 3. Now you will see that minimum number in this set is now minus 3. You will expand this again to other numbers. So you will compare it with 5, you will compare it with 7. And when you see the minus 6, then you will update the minimum number to minus 6. And then you will actually expand it to the end of this array. This will give you the minimum number in the whole set. So solve it for two numbers and then expand it for all the numbers. So this, I gave you an example that we can apply on arrays. Now let's see how we can apply it in the depth first search. This is where things get very interesting. Let's see. So depth first search. The problem statement states that how do you traverse a graph in search for one or the several nodes? So we have to traverse a graph. That is the statement right now. And how do you solve it? We will solve for one node, and then we will simply call the recursive function for all the remaining nodes. Let's look at the base condition for this, for the depth first search. Okay, so this is the graph right now, and we have to traverse this graph and then see how we can apply the induction. So for the induction, what we will do is we'll start from one node. For example, let's say we start with 0, and then we just need to see that, okay, what do we need to do if we had only one node in the graph? That means we just need to traverse it. The second case will be if there is an edge connected to the 0, what we have to do, what we will do is we will visit that simple node, and then we will list all the neighbors in the stack. That means they have not been visited yet, but we just want to record it that what are their neighbors, 1 and 3. Actually, it should be 2 as well here. So imagine that there is no edge between 0 and 2. I think that will be true then. So that is there. So for example, we are visiting only one node and recording the neighbors. This is the step for one node. Now we will simply expand this step to all the nodes. Again, we'll pick another node. So here we'll pick the node from the stack 1. We will then insert the neighbors first. So the neighbors of 1 is 2, that we will insert it in the stack. And that's it. We will mark the 1 as visited, insert the neighbors. Mark the node as visited, insert the neighbors. So this is what we need to do. So here, after this 3 and 2, we'll pick one node from the stack. We'll pick 3. And there is no neighbor attached to 3. So that's why we'll not be able to insert anything. So 3 will be marked as visited. The stack will have only 2. Then after that, we will pick one element from stack. Then we will mark 2 as visited. We'll insert 4 in the stack. Then we will pick 4 as visited, and then all the neighbors, all the nodes are visited. Hence, we will simply break the loop. So similar idea that we have learned so far. That's what we want to apply it here.